You know Hela, right? The goddess of death from Asgard? She's incredibly powerful, absolutely terrifying, a top-tier villain for sure. But what if I told you there's way more to her story than just good versus evil? What if she actually represents something deep inside all of us? Well, today we're going to peel back the layers on Hela using a really fascinating psychological lens. And it all boils down to this one central question. Is she just another bad guy to be defeated? Or is she something Asgard and its heroes desperately needed? To even begin to answer that, we've got to get familiar with a key concept from the psychologist Carl Jung. And here it is, the shadow archetype. Now, Jung described this as the dark side of our personality. But don't just think evil twin. It's not necessarily evil at all. It's just all the stuff we've pushed down. The parts of ourselves we don't like to talk about, our hidden desires, our primal instincts, those memories that make us cringe. It's the part of us we pretend doesn't exist. And Hela? In every single version of her story, she is the perfect walking, talking embodiment of the shadow. To really see how this works, we're going to trace Hela's evolution across three major versions of her character. We'll start with her ancient roots in Norse myth, then jump into the pages of Marvel Comics, and finally land on her explosive debut in the MCU. And what's so cool is that each version shows us a completely different facet of the shadow. This table is basically our roadmap. In the Old Norse myths, Hela is what Jung would call the collective shadow, representing a truth that an entire culture just refused to look at. Then in the comics, she becomes a transgenerational shadow, which is a fancy way of saying she carries the baggage and trauma of her ancestors. And finally, in the MCU, it gets super personal. She becomes the personal shadow for one very, very powerful guy, her own father, Odin. So let's start at the very beginning. In actual Norse mythology, Hel rules the underworld, and get this, her appearance is half-living woman, half-rotting corpse. She is literally the bridge between life and death. The gods, being terrified of their own mortality, banished her to the darkest, coldest corner of the cosmos. By doing that, they were basically trying to shove the very idea of death into a closet and lock the door. She became the shadow for their entire society. Now, the comics take this idea and make it a family affair. Hela is born from all this ancestral chaos and drama. She basically becomes the living, breathing embodiment of the Asgardian royal family's unresolved issues, their instability. You know the phrase, the sins of the fathers? Well, they're all projected onto her, making her a vessel for the darkness her ancestors refused to deal with themselves. But then the MCU comes along and makes this concept even more direct and way more personal. Here, Hela isn't some distant, complicated relative. No, she is Odin's firstborn child. She was his original enforcer, his executioner. She is the literal dark twin to his whole wise, benevolent king persona. The part of himself he had to lock away in a cage to become the hero we all thought he was. And this just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have Odin's public image, the wise, peaceful protector. But Hela, she is the brutal truth. She represents the reality that he wasn't a protector. He was a conqueror who built his shiny golden kingdom on a foundation of blood and conquest. So by literally painting over her murals and wiping her from the history books, Odin was performing a kind of psychic surgery. He didn't just hide a person. He tried to cut out and bury his own shadow. Of course, secrets like that never stay buried for long, do they? Hela's return forces everyone, especially her little brother Thor, to finally confront the ugly truth about where they come from. And this, right here, is a classic, essential part of the hero's journey, the moment the hero has to face the shadow. For Thor, this is a seriously painful but absolutely necessary wake-up call. He starts out with this immature ego, totally buying into the perfect myth of Asgard. And Hela just shatters that illusion. I mean, she literally shatters his hammer, the very symbol of his old identity. He's forced to encounter the truth she represents, and then finally, he has to integrate it. See, he can't just defeat Hela. To become whole, to really become a king, he has to accept the truth of what Asgard was built on. Okay, but why is Hela so incredibly powerful? And why does she seem to get stronger the second she gets back to Asgard? Well, the answer, once again, is in Jungian psychology. It's this idea that the shadow isn't just a weakness, it's also a source of mind-blowing strength. You see, Jung believed that all those parts of ourselves we repress, the parts we push into the dark, they hold this immense, raw, primal energy. When we ignore them, that energy just festers. But when we confront it, we can tap into a wellspring of power and vitality. Hela is the personification of that exact idea. Just think about it. When she's in exile, her power is limited, it's contained. But the moment she sets foot back in Asgard, she becomes almost unbeatable. That's not just a convenient plot device. Symbolically, she is repressed energy returning to its source. She is literally drawing strength from the secrets buried in the ground beneath her feet, fueled by the very history Asgard tried to hide. So what does this all add up to? When you put all these pieces together, Hela's true purpose in the story becomes incredibly clear. She is the ghost of Asgard's past, kicking down the front door. She is the dramatic, violent return of everything they tried to forget. So here's the big takeaway. Hela isn't just a villain to be overcome. She is a psychological necessity. Her entire job in this story is to force the bright, shining, golden world of Asgard to finally take a long, hard look in the mirror and confront the darkness it was built on. Without her, there's no real growth. There's no balance. Ultimately, Hela's story is this powerful, epic reminder of a fundamental psychological truth. You can't achieve wholeness by pretending your dark side doesn't exist. You can't just live in the light. You have to acknowledge the shadow, understand it, and integrate it. After all, it's the reality of death that gives life its urgency and its meaning. Which brings us right back home to a final thought. Hela is the shadow of a mythical kingdom. But we all have shadows, don't we? Parts of our own histories, parts of our personalities that we've pushed away. So the real question Hela leaves us with isn't about gods and monsters. It's about us. What happens when we finally turn around and confront our own?